Okay. Good, we're recording. And so, but since next week is our final class, and like I said, a lot of you are already there in this sense of, I hate the word conversion, but affiliation. I've invited Jeff, who is the head of the ritual committee. I was going to invite Carol. You can speak about your experience. And I thought it might be an interesting topic as part of next week's class, to talk about, what happens, how does a person integrate? And in that process, I'll talk about choosing a Jewish name, which some of you have already done. I mean, some of you are already in the mix. I've already been kicking around ideas with some of you. I will continue kind of not making assignments, but following up with everybody on their essays for the Beit Din, whether you're doing it here or in Denver. Let me set the tone, Carol. Take five minutes if you like, both of you.
Before we begin,
Yeah.
you said at the office Thursday. What time at the office Thursday?
Oh, no. The Shalom dinner, not the office, the restaurant, the office.
Right.
Thursday nights, I'm sorry, I'm rushing. Thursday nights, they do the Shalom dinner at 6:30, once a month. So what is the office? On Del Range, right? Huh? I call it right next to the movie theaters. Yeah, right. Yeah. 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 Oh, okay. And these are all, pay your own way, and it's fun. And I guess we'll probably I will take care of you. Okay. You take care of me. Okay, we'll treat each other. That's when we went down to Denver. Noam and me and his friend Nachi went to see a speaker in Denver, which you may have heard about, Jewish, an Israeli Arab. And I offered to treat the guest, Nachi from Israel, and we were going to go three-way. Noam was going to pay for me. I was going to pay for Nachi. Paid for all three of us. It was really nice. He's a very nice guy. He's now in Brazil. Hopefully you'll meet him sometime. He's very cool. Yeah, he picked me up at the airport. Anyway, I am not ADDing. I'm just trying to multitask here. Somehow we're going to manage to cover the 20th century, tonight. But first, I thought, like say 10 minutes, let's talk about personal experiences that you have had, you guys, Carol, and I'll start by saying that there's a lot of baggage emotionally, and Des too. There's a lot of baggage in the Jewish community, which shouldn't be there, about conversion. By that I mean, you will hear from people, and rightly so. Once you're a Jew, you're a Jew, right? Nobody walks up to you and say, you're a convert. There are certain questions or things that are impolite to ask a person. Why did you convert? You don't convert for marriage, but sometimes people have that as a factor. I took an interview once in a synagogue in Northern California, and the previous rabbi, I'm not saying he was wrong, but he wasn't there. So the previous rabbi had insisted and had drummed into them, don't ask, So I'm in the interview, and it was obvious that there were a couple of people in the interview that were Jews by choice. So I said something like, "Oh, are you a Jew by choice?" And boom, wasn't the end of the interview, but it is, in my opinion, it's something to be proud of. No different than saying I moved here from America, or I'm French. You can tell by my accent. But on the other hand, it is, as I said, it is not only is it impolite to probe and pull and but accept the person fully as who they are. And then the problem is, not problem, but the rabbi of that congregation, wherever that might be, would then say, well, can you have an aliyah? Do you know Hebrew? So you want to be as comfortable and fluent as you can be. But it's there was a thing I was going to send out came from an agency I work with, and they said, you'll be doing this for the rest of your life, you know. So who would like to go first and just share a little bit of their experiences? Shall we go with veteran status first? Carol?
Veteran as far as being a Judy, you mean?
Yeah, the longest and your turn.
Just because of my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So my mother-in-law grew up in Vienna and escaped as a 16-year-old a few nights after Kristallnacht. And she was fluent in German because she worked as an interpreter, and that she was blonde. So she managed to get a student visa to go to the Netherlands, and then she had an aunt in the United States eventually. So she went by herself as a 16-year-old, and she arrived in New York on July 4th. And she says, "Oh my gosh, they lit fireworks for me."
Wow. Yeah.
But she vowed that if she did make it out, because a lot of her friends didn't. She told me about a time that they were all going to a movie, a whole group of teenagers, and she just was sick that night, so she didn't go. She never saw any of them again. Just little things like that. And I grew up Catholic. Okay, so they're both have a lot of traditions. And I really don't care what my children ultimately decide. But even if you decide to be Christian, being Jewish is a good base of knowledge. So really in honor of her, because when she came to the United States, she said, if I survive this, I'm going to give the rest of my life to charity, which she really did for the next 50 years. She was probably the head of Hadassah in Detroit. So she was one of the founding people of Hadassah Hospital in Israel. And she donated, just millions and millions of dollars from the Detroit area Jewish community through the years. And so inspiration of how someone can be really powerful in their own, make the world a better place. So I really, because
potential start of the Third World War, and we will soon be hit with a silent, untraceable attack on America that unfortunately very few will see coming. This attack will be unlike any we have seen before. One that directly targets American farmlands and supply chains, which will
for 12 years prior, so you can imagine how dirty that was.
Oh,
I was waiting that time,
wow.
and I was 8 months pregnant and had to get in.
You know what? I think you would have had a harder time than I did. It was a challenge.
Steve and her are the couple. She's married to Steve. And you guys have 4 kids. Yeah. So, I never knew that. So you converted just before the first child? Second child was born? Oh, wow. And at the time when you were here, when I was long before me, it wasn't Rabbi Moldo. It was who the rabbi? Who's the rabbi? One of the traditional old time.
Yeah, he was really traditional, and he would not marry us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So we really haven't been married in Jewish religion.
But look at her now. She's the head of the sisterhood. President of the sisterhood.
So I actually had to go through the conversion again. Now, this is a good story. I'm going to tell this to you. So I had to go through the conversion again because my mother-in-law decided to pay for my son's bar mitzvah and his cousin. They're almost the same age in Detroit. So she had a big party. And the rabbis there did not accept my conversion. So in order for my son to have his bar mitzvah in Detroit, I had to go through the conversion again.
Oh, you're kidding. Wow.
The day before he had his bar mitzvah. So at the end of the bar mitzvah, we went to pay for, everything. And I went up to my mother-in-law and we were going to give her a check, and she said, "Oh, don't worry about it." And we said, "Well, why?" And she said, "This one's on Hitler." And what she had done is she had saved all of her survivor checks from Austria from when she escaped and put them all towards the bar mitzvah and the 2 boys.
Wow.
In some ways, this relates to our topic tonight. I didn't know your mother-in-law's background. Um,
No, but you had to get, no, they just asked you some questions and you know, all that stuff.
So you got to go through the meet twice.
Yeah.
That means twice.
It's gonna make me cool twice, but I could do without the baby.
Baby
twice.
twice,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's.
I would say that the ease with which you're all discussing this is very refreshing. Most recent one, Des, and you guys also recent, but, or what other questions do you guys have for our participants, not guests, in the sense, you know, and this is not every synagogue. Every synagogue is going to be different. But why don't you go first? Go next, because you and Tyler were on a long journey. When I remember when I first met you, you expressed some frustration because of all the rabbinic runarounds you'd gotten.
But you know, in the end, I'm actually really glad that it took the length of time that it did, because it's your own journey, and enjoy it. Because you know what? And it's really, really cool to not have to fast on Yom Kippur versus you have to. So enjoy that you technically don't have to.
What do you think is the hardest part of this?
I,
Most difficult part
you know
of
what?
becoming a Jew,
Honestly,
or
Yeah,
Oh.
since you became.
since
oh,
becoming Jewish, I think the hardest thing, and that's why I want to do a cooking class, is none of us had a Jewish bubby to teach us how
uh-huh.
to make kugel or challah or things like that. And so that's
That's
for me
interesting.
been the hardest part, is that because I love to bake, I love to cook, and it's that I wish I'd had that. That's why I'm always saying, go to the kitchen, you guys.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's
What about for you?
Big question.
With you practicing as long as you have, though, did you really notice any change? 'Cause you've been practicing for quite some time before you actually went through your Beit Din.
He was 10 when they were going here earlier on,
no,
the first
15.
15. Oh,
Mhm.
oh, that's how I got that number in my head. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. I feel like I grew up with this study.
I don't know if you were baptized previously. But for any,
Twice, that's a funny story.
that's funny. I was too, but that's strange. But for anybody that was old enough to remember a baptism, because if you're Catholic, well, no, you didn't. But it is not even close to the same experience. Maybe it's the pollution in the water. I don't know, but it is its own unique. Yeah, I mean, it's your own just.
Okay. I have-
What about you? What was
Good
hard for
time.
you? What's been the hardest for you?
Honestly, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I'm so far away from all you. It's really hard being Jewish.
Yeah,
It's not a cop out.
no,
It's,
that's not a
it's,
cop out.
it's,
That's
it, yeah, I understand because I know him well. We talk a lot and, I mean, you're not as far as Wheatland, like, Ben and, Rebecca. Well, there's a woman who's up in Wheatland who's been kind of on the outskirts coming to some events and she seems to be interested in joining the tribe. I mean, there's just things that have to do with, Wyoming and the situation here. Does anybody here know Dave Lucero?
Mhm.
Or you know of him? Guy with a beard, bigger than Tyler's. He looks like he could be a rabbi, except he's like Hispanic, complexion. He came to his bait din and I'd never seen him before in a suit. And I said, Rabbi, how are you doing? Dave lives in Rawlins. So that's a schlep. So just being Jewish in Wyoming is a challenge. Aside from I want to become Jewish, and Bailey lives in Nebraska. So, but I talk to Des quite a bit. And I recommend to any of you, because we have the internet, use the internet. Suppose it's just snowing out, just get online, find a service, find a synagogue you like, and go to that synagogue too. And the one, I don't want to use the whole time up on this, but the one issue that I thought somebody would bring up, and I'm bringing it up anyway, is acceptance. Do you wonder, those of you who are hanging on, looking in the window, do you feel that you're worried about acceptance? We can talk about this some more next week too. Or because this community is just the way it is, it's not an issue.
I'll tell
It's
you
not-
what, I started coming a while ago
Mhm,
with Stephanie and Tyler, and you meet some of the most amazing people here.
mhm.
And so much that you start looking forward to going back the following week, whether it be a holiday or some kind of event in here, or if it's just service. Just to be able to go say hi.
Hmm.
That's what got me wrapped in, and then being able to be a part of it all and watching everything. Watching Tyler and Stephanie go through their bait dean and everything. It's really, I've been welcomed with open arms.
And that's another, I don't want to keep editorializing. The other thing I keep emphasizing, more than emphasizing, keep hammering on in this community, and I see it everywhere, even in non-liberal, but mostly more liberal synagogues, is people like you, people like Gretchen and James, people who are in the tribe, but not Jewish, or whatever you want the word is. You could keep hanging on here as long as you like and not even make a just decision to jump in the water because, as far as I'm concerned, because of who you are. And that goes for your kids too.
But knowing all the people, why wouldn't one person want to after
Yeah,
seeing
okay.
everybody and meeting everybody and doing the things that we do here? Why wouldn't you?
That goes back to the original, huh? That goes back to the first class. Everybody talks about religion, but remember what I said, peoplehood, belonging, behaving, believing. So belong, hey, this is fun. I like these people. I mean, Rick's not here tonight. Do you know that Rick's wife, Amber Dawn, she is actually Amber Dawn. She has two names. And she made one of the kugels on Sunday. And she's been making challahs. And so whatever happens with the two of them, he's the one who's converting, but you mentioned the cooking. She's into it. She just loves that part of it. So whatever your door is, might be food, it might be the Holocaust, even that, might be I hear all these people hate you. Why do they hate Jews? Oh, I'm going to read up on that. It happens. A lot of people are Jews, born Jewish, are waking up after October 7th, which is weird, but it's a factor. Enough talking from me. Who else wants to share or from the group or ask a question that we could then discuss more next week, like with Jeff here? We'll probably go downstairs and take a look at the mikvah next week and talk about that. Des, you want to share some more?
Sure. Sorry, you put me on the spot. I guess the thing I have the most to say about is, this is a really hard and chaotic world. It's nice to have some where to live.
Hmm.
the same place.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and again, I don't want to keep jumping in and editorializing. I have been through so many different people's journeys. A Black woman with her son in England. It wasn't even my client. It was, I just was asked to be a witness at the debate then. And I think I told you guys about a guy, Bob, can't remember his wife's name, but they came, Bob was Jewish, but Bob had kidney problems and was on dialysis. He was a member of my synagogue in West Covina. And the incentive or the impetus was the daughter and the son were, which was one by his and one by hers, I think. And we had a bar mitzvah coming up for the boy. And it was a conservative synagogue. So, I was going to say that, it'd be good for the kid to convert. So we came to the Beit Din. This was in the days when we had really conservative rabbis in LA. I mean, old timers. In fact, one of the old timers was the previous rabbi of that congregation, Henry Kraus from Poland, and the old guys. And I was sweating for her. So we went to convert her. I forgot her name, but her and the daughter, no, the son came along for the ride, and Bob. So she was home taking care of Bob because he had all these problems with his kidney stuff. And you think you guys, worry. She couldn't remember things. So they asked her a question, and it was something, whatever it was, a history question, and she froze up. And I mean, this is, like I said, this is the old time rabbis. And then they asked the 12-year-old daughter who was in the Hebrew school, and she answered the question like that. It was King David this or that or whatever it was. And they said, Henry said, do you know the fact that you have made sure that your daughter has a Jewish education? That's enough for me. And they went ahead and approved her. So it was, so I have many, many stories. Huh? What's that?
I said,
Yeah.
hey, thanks, David.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think the
Um,
hardest part of the Beit Din is when you have two complete strangers that you're trying to
Yeah.
express
yes,
your sincerity to on wanting to convert and why you want to convert. I
Mhm.
mean,
One of my
obviously,
biggest fears, I'm not gonna lie. Sitting in front of a couple of people, I have no idea who they are or.
would you be more intimidated if it's members of the synagogue or down in Denver talking to two rabbis?
I'd feel more comfortable here
Oh, okay,
because I know who they are.
all right, yeah.
You're doing mine.
Well, my opinion is I'd rather go to Denver, but it's also a 2-hour drive, and it involves a little bit of finances. But I'd rather have the rabbi's signature on it. I will try to get for future ones. I will try to get Rabbi Sally and her husband Boaz to come up from Fort Collins. All right, that's all we have time for tonight. But I just want you guys to know that I'll say what I said last week. This has been probably the most rewarding class I've taught from a standpoint of the chevra, the interaction, the social interaction, the fellowship, and you'll all see each other around the shul in the coming years. Okay, so Jamie, you ready? Okay, Jamie's talk is on.
Urban Jewish resilience during World War II.
Oh, that's really fitting.
that's awesome.
That's really
But with that being said,
okay.
I have a two-part thing. The first is a slideshow. The second is a video.
What time frame?
Probably about 8 minutes.
Okay,
Probably.
go.
Are you logged? Oh, you're not.
With the video, it is graphic. So I just want everyone to.
Well, let's
I
get
will
the
tell
lights.
you Before I start the second part. But just a heads up, it is fairly graphic, and I totally get if, you want to look away. I will let you know before that video starts.
Real quickly,
Do
you want
will
to
this show up?
log into Zoom? Because then I can make you a co-host so that, you know what I mean? Like you and I did last week.
Go on.
Otherwise, I don't know
Yes,
how
I know.
anybody at home's.
Well, they would be able to look, have our thing, our computer turned towards that.
All right, well, we'll do that way.
Yeah, it shows in one.
Yeah.
Oh, if you don't have
Over it.
Zoom, then that's, okay.
And then I will read the slides.
Well, that's pretty scary already.
I know.
No,
As long as you help me pronounce it. So I speak German very well.
all right, now I have to try to focus. My German is non-existent too, but what you want to do is change it to presentation mode. You know where that is? Oh, it starts out with, that's Hatikva. Can you get your volume higher? Oh,
So just a little background information.
sorry.
You're fine. Kind of before the war started.
I'm not thinking.
The black is, what was occupied by Muslims. The third one, sorry. And then on the right, it just kind of estimated, 500,000-6,000 German Jews lived within the old borders of Germany at the start of 1933. Roughly 60% immigrated from Germany within the 6 years following Nazi occupation. And pretty much for the years following that is down all the persecution all started. So that's kind of just the background of the and at the start of everything, they started putting up signs, propaganda, the Germans defend yourself, don't buy from the Jews.
This is, the stormtroopers began 33 through 36, more or less.
Judenfrei.
Yeah,
Judenfrei.
Judenfrei.
So free Jews.
He is the chief rabbi, was the chief rabbi of England.
And so resiliency, the process and outcome successfully adapting to a difficult or challenging experience. So basically, obviously, with all the challenges that those German Jewish folks, especially, were facing at the start of occupation in the two. They kind of go in a few ways and demonstrated their resilience. It's kind of like, here in the United States, back in, the 60s, they had safety areas. Places only areas that say, not for Jews and basic resistance was. Only Jews want to sit on that park bench. I don't care if it's just for area, something as basic as that. That's where it's starting. And there's also physical resistance. Many Jews managed to escape from camps and went into hiding, and they actually designed fighting units. Kind of the busier spots are kind of all over the map here.
Can you keep this on for a minute? Can I interject? Because this is part of what, I don't have that slide. I used this same slide in another presentation I've given on the resistance. The resistors, there were different kinds of resistance, and you're right, there was spiritual resistance and getting out, but the actual physical resistance took place in a lot of areas outside of Germany near the camps. But the most maybe salient areas was up on the right-hand side up there is Vilna. That's today is Belarus in Russia, or Ukraine actually. and there was a huge ghetto built there. And that was where the resistance had a center. And then below to the left there, Bialystok, see that area there? The forest. There's I was going to bring this up. There's a whole set of posters we have. There was a group of guys, 4 brothers that lived in a small city, small town, and they led people into the forest. And there's a movie on it called Defiance, which stars Liv Schreiber and Daniel Craig as the two of the brothers. So they literally left the city, went to live in the forest, and they just grabbed all these people and said, "Come and stay with us." And they protected people, like about 1,200 people. So those are some of the centers of resistance. And of course, the most famous physical resistance is the Warsaw Ghetto.
We also have a social resilience, basically aiding and abetting Jews, by other Jews who are hiding their non-Jewish allies, hiring Jews for labor to limit some in the camps. Trying to sneak in house folks, roughly 10,000 children, mostly Jewish, the majority from Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. About the other foster families in the UK to save as an occupied generation.
Can you turn that down? Your volume down? Oh, okay. Then it must be
Yeah,
this.
it's coming from the.
All right, I don't know where we're good.
And obviously, any kind of resistance, if you're caught, generally very, very punished for worse, so. Obviously, very, very famous, the movie Schindler's List. Oskar Schindler is a German businessman who acquired previously Jewish-owned factories, and basically he employed forced Jewish laborers and who would falsify records and help basically keep them out of the camps and kind of get them to safety. And he is obviously there's a lot more to it. We don't have a lot of time, but he's tried to was through saving over 1,000 people. Hans Kammer, he's a German lawyer that would bend laws and rules in order to protect Jews. And drag out decision-making processes and basically did a lot of legal stuff and helping out Jewish people. And he is credited by the Israeli Holocaust Center from Israel with saving at least 3,000 Jewish lives. And I won't read all these, but these are just so many different social movement groups that stood up and helped.
He turned it up. I don't know how he turned.
He turned it up.
And then here's pictures of some of the youth resilience.
Oh my God. Oh, there's so many stories of these kids.
Will you email this to me?
Did you put this together yourself from material? That's incredible.
Yeah, we could definitely email it.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so that's gonna get pronunciation on the Stein.
Steinbrook. I don't know this particular story.
So. Let's read your youth, right? And there was social resilience group, and basically, I'd have to go back and read the whole story, but they were. The three of them were actually young, and they were one of the few that actually had their own award.
Oh,
And then recent flyers.
Didn't know what it
There's also medical and spiritual resilience. Basically, victims would often use such to create music and art, find rabbis and still try to practice some way to fill people's neighborhoods. And this one particularly interesting person, Professor Francisco. It was an Italian composer who has made his life's work to find and orchestrate music Proposed by prisoners in the Nazi camps, he has managed to salvage around 8,000 musical works over 30 years, which is pretty amazing. An estimated 15,000 German Jews were liberated by the Allied forces in 1945. Average age of living survivors was 86, and 95% of them classified as trail survivors, being an average age of 7 at 4 times 10. Only 5.8% returned to Germany for some point of life. The oldest living Holocaust survivor at the time of this slideshow created Rose Rome. Full female living in New York. He is 112 years old. So this one's story is very interesting. Her family's country. And basically, she was forced to work at a textile factory. She injured her finger, and on her way to the doctor and primary, she ran through it. And she actually did get away. She altered her look. Long story short, she ended up getting a job with at a movie theater, and the cashier actually helped her because she was Jewish, and actually she ended up in Paris and remained in Paris until she died at 95 years old. Obviously, everyone's heard of the Nuremberg trials, and then the Western known Frankfurt Auschwitz trials. Basically, everyone higher up, all the way down to the lower end. People even to this day are still trying to be tried for their weapons. Many were executed in order to get out of prison.
Oh, I don't know him.
This one is very important, so I'm gonna butcher his name.
Zolt.
Don't follow. His mother and grandparents are Holocaust survivors. German military chief Rabbi. He's the first in almost 90 years, and a settler expelled Jews from the armed forces in the 1930s. He's joined the German army 8 decades after the Nazis perpetrated the Holocaust. The military plans on eventually having up to 10 rabbis to provide pastoral care for the estimated 80 to 300 Jewish soldiers currently serving.
Huh. Mhm.
Those listed are only a small portion of the more well-known Germans who took a stand against Nazism, Jewish prosecution, and genocide. Note that those listed come from all walks of life, different occupations and religions, those who paid the ultimate price for their good deeds and were executed or suffered deaths are highlighted in red. And obviously, we don't have time to go through all the pages. Once again, if anyone wants a copy of this, we can definitely provide it. But there were so many that were not well known that actually risked their lives and did pay the ultimate price.
Where did you get all this? I'm assuming you did most of the research, but
Yeah.
where did you find all this material? Yeah. Yeah.
Way to be honest.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not implying that she, you can borrow from many sources, and it's called research. You borrow from one and it's called plagiarism. But this is, I just admire your dedication. And some of these people I know of and others I don't. Huh?
It just cracked me up.
Yeah. But this, there must be some sort of a, whatever the word is, a plan, that because this leads right to where we're going. I thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, guys. Very good job.
If we have time, I would like to show the video real quick. and we'll
Oh,
get
okay.
everything there.
What is the
that your
video?
car?
What-
No, it's mine.
What is the video of?
It goes with the slide.
Okay, go for it. I think you're doing some of my work for me. And also I sent the PowerPoint to everybody, but I want to go through some key points here.
This is Jamie noted, kind of toward the end of this video, there is some
Yeah,
graphic
so,
photos. I mean, it is about the Holocaust, just to be forewarned. But it's important, we felt, that people still see it, so the fresher you see the harder stuff, you don't forget it. And as we see what's going on in the world right now, I think a lot of people have forgotten. So,
And where is this from?
she created this one.
I need this.
You made this?
What a talent you have.
You come over and show me how to work that computer, right?
Imagine something like this on Black History, or the sixties. I mean, this is, and these are pictures that I have not seen either. So you grabbed things from different sources. Wow. I can't raise that up. That won't work. Oh, see if you can change your presentation mode. Full screen. Over there, far, next one over, two over. I think that might be it. Yeah, that might be it. Full screen. Oh, exit. Oh, so that is full screen. That's. Marcus, you might be able to help her. No, it's fine. It's fine. Oh my God. There you go. That's Kristallnacht. That was November 1938. You know where that is? Stop. Can you go back? Does everybody know where that is? That's the entrance to Auschwitz, which is still standing.
Free camp. So that was the biggest.
Yeah, no, there were many camps.
Three different camps.
Right. Wait a second. No, it's okay. Oh, it's your speaker. That's why.
Wow, that
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Job well
Two
done.
things, one was, you had the Lion of Judah, and then you had the tablets like on the side. So I read the whole thing, I think it was my big. And no, it said, I am the Lion of Judah, but I couldn't read the rest of it, but I think that's from Isaiah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
the whole reference comes from Isaiah.
and then,
Um,
it wasn't as graphic as I thought you was gonna be showing.
Yeah,
That's
what I thought.
pretty heavy.
We're going into this.
You know, that was excellent.
Where did you get the, I want to hear more about how you developed this and that music. I've never heard that before. Can I get that plug in here? Guys, this is a very difficult subject to cover. And so I'm gonna try to do it in a way that will seem a little bit not cold, but intellectual. And what I was thinking of this afternoon, I think James helped. Marcus, were you involved last year with the Holocaust Remembrance Day program? No. Tyler, you helped, huh? You came that night?
No, I just disassociated.
Oh, no, ours here. We've had two. We had one there 2 years ago. Tyler, didn't you help last year?
I helped set it up.
Set it up. Okay. Anyway, the synagogue years ago got from the another hand to Jamie. Thank you. I mean, I have to adjust. You've done my work tonight because part of what you did, I'll talk about what I was going to talk about the posters in a minute. What you did implies what I'm going to talk about. And sometimes I do this class in two parts. This week we do they hated us, they hated us, they hated us. And next week we survived, and here's Israel. We're going to try to compress them. But there's a connection that you were making about the Lion of Judah and all of that, because in some ways, and I don't like to overplay this, in some ways Israel exists because of the Holocaust, at least in the eyes of the world. The world felt so guilty after the end of the war that the UN voted to partition Palestine. And here were all these Jews waiting to get in, and some had already gotten there and had been smuggled in. So when you go to Israel, I don't say if, but when, one of the things you need to go do is to go to the museum in Jerusalem called Yad Vashem. It's a phrase from a prophet. It means monument and name. Yad is hand, but it also means a monument. So the Yad Vashem Museum is two things or three things. It's a museum of the Holocaust, which you can actually walk through and see things like they have a rail car that they brought over that is sitting there out in the yard. And there's statuary and there's documentation. The second thing that it is not just a museum, but it's also actually three things. It's also a monument. It is literally, because Yad means monument too. So it's a monument, but like the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. And by the way, there are several Holocaust museums in America. Washington's one. There's L.A. and there's Florida. But all these museums have in common that they're places where people go to learn and experience. But the third thing that Yad Vashem does is they gather stories of people who survived, like this material, and also in the, let's say, early 70s, there began to be filter out more stories of righteous Gentiles, people who had rescued Jews. And so they document the stories of people. So I was the rabbi in Attleboro, Massachusetts, small little town just north of Providence. And it was a small place. And it was a synagogue, maybe the same size as this, but smaller building, but 40, 50 members. And they had a parsonage that I lived in. It was about a block from the shul. So I lived in the house and I would walk in the snow, my first experience in the heavy snow, not my first actually, but it was New England, it wasn't Philly snow. So I would walk from my house to the synagogue. And every time when I walked down a block, I would walk past a couple. And their names were Basha and Stefan, and they lived with Basha's sister, Rose. So there's these two women and a guy, and they're 70s living in this house. And wave, 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 high going, wave, wave, wave. Every time I'd walk by, and I saw who they were. Little by little, we got to talking. Turns out that they were in Warsaw. And Basha and Rose and two other sisters had, like you said, they survived because they looked Aryan, and they didn't live when Warsaw was divided into the ghetto area. Is anybody aware of what they did? They walled off a whole section of the city. It would be as if you said all the Jews have to live in 2 blocks of Cheyenne, 5 blocks of Cheyenne. So they didn't do that. They lived outside the ghetto because they got Aryan papers, and they were living in an apartment house about literally, you could see the wall of the ghetto. You could see into the ghetto. So Stefan is living in another apartment in the same building with his mother or his family. And he says, Mom, these people, are something unusual. And he realized he had to help them. So they became supporters, and they said, you're not safe. You got to come and live with us. So Stefan's mom and him took in first the sister, then that sister, then that sister. Before you knew it, there were 18 people living in their apartment, in this little apartment right outside the ghetto walls. Well, the war went on, and also Stefan, and this is right in my neighborhood, right? So I didn't know anything about him. And Stefan used to go into the ghetto. I shouldn't explain. He's Christian. He was Christian, and mom was Christian. And he used to go in and out of the ghetto, smuggling in supplies and food and messages back out to the Polish resistance. So he's doing this all through the war. And eventually he and Basha fell in love. The war concluded, or maybe it was during the war, and they got married. And eventually one sister went to Israel. Another sister came to America, and Basha and Rose were the only ones living when I got to know them. Well, so here's this guy living right down the street from me. And we had a Holocaust program at this synagogue, and said, Stefan, and he could barely speak English. She spoke for him. And we realized right in our midst was living a righteous Gentile. And so we had the Israeli consulate guy come down from Boston. I mean, it's like Cheyenne to Denver, because Boston didn't really get Attleboro. Whoever heard of Attleboro? By the way, we had several incidents of anti-Semitic. There were 3 kids that were harassing a Jewish woman on the school board. So Stefan became a celebrity, and we had him as a guest speaker at the synagogue. And wouldn't you know it, I stayed at that synagogue for 2 years. I moved on, and about the year after I left, he died. So I looked up Basha, and until about 4 years ago, she was still living. So here were 2 women and another sister in Israel that survived because of Stefan and his mother. So that's another thing. Anyway, back to the connection. Let's see if I can do it. Okay. So if I were to do this, in a systematic way, we've already talked somewhat about this. Biblical anti-Semitism. Okay. So, Haman, Antiochus, the Pharaoh. Is that clear enough, or should I clear that up a little bit? But what we really are talking about is a different kind of anti-Semitism. All right, religious anti-Semitism. Some of you know this already. The decision that not all Christians, but plenty of them, the Jews are Christ killers, the Crusades, the blood libel, which began to take form. And that was the blood libel was that Jews would use the blood of a Christian child to make matzah, but also just in general, if there was a murder that was unsolved, it would be pinned on the Jews. Does anybody know when the most recent blood libel that occurred was? There were two that were major. Huh? There might have been one in France. The one that's really well known was in Russia, 1905-06, and it was Mendel Bayless case. It was, again, an unsolved murder pinned on this guy, and he was thrown in prison, and it became a well-known cause célèbre, and it's the subject of the book by Bernard Malamud called The Fixer. But I'm going to blow your minds when I tell you that there was also a case in New Jersey in 1920 something of, again, an unsolved murder. All right.
Screen share.
Huh?
You can screen share.
Oh yeah, I should do that. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm
Nope, that's okay.
jumping ahead here. And for anybody at home, I sent this to you also. How do I, in order to do that, I can't do it there. In order to do that, I got to get out of here for just a second, shut off PowerPoint, and go to screen share. And now I lost it. Share. There it is. Okay. All right. So now I get on both. So I mentioned last week, I'm going to jump ahead because, some of these things you guys have heard. So biblical, religious, political anti-Semitism takes its, really begins, and now I got to get this out of here. The chat, get rid of the chat. Yeah. I mentioned this last week. So the idea that the Jews are just never going to be assimilated, we cannot, make them a part of society. That began in Germany in the 1880s. This is a picture on the right side of the protocols of the so-called Elders of Zion, which purports, does anybody know what it is?
It's this wacky book where basically
Yeah.
like political conspiracy jargon, just a lot of just left and right turns that makes no sense.
Yes, makes no sense. But it was, and you know who published it and got it most air in America? Henry Ford. He would promote it. He would get it published. Could somebody go and get me some water over there? I'm just very dry.
He did that.
Yeah.
He also put out propaganda sheets
Yep.
against Jews and have people stop buying things at their business.
Yep.
kill 'em. And when I found that out, I stopped buying Ford products because I used to like Ford until I found out their great grandfather was doing that.
Yeah. So the term, and this is connected in some ways to racism in general. If you say, I don't like these people because of this or because of that, but you say, I don't like these people, period, you don't have to explain it. And this term anti-Semitism was introduced in Austria as this scientific term for the hatred of the Jews. I can't get it any clearer. Thank you so much. Now, the word Holocaust, some of you know, is something that burns entirely. An entire forest is wiped out. Okay. And even in the Bible, I mean, it's not the Hebrew word, but the Hebrew word for a sacrifice that you put on the altar, there were those you would bring and somebody would eat it. And there was others that would be just a grain offering, but there was also offerings that were burnt up. And that was called, and you'll see it in the Torah, and you'll say, and he made a Holocaust offering. What? So Holocaust meant total destruction. So it was a term that they began to use after World War II to describe this. Another term you may know of is genocide. The term that I prefer and that you'll hear more often nowadays is Shoah. So we can all say that Shoah, the Shoah. It's like the difference between, I don't want to say, gay and homosexual is not that bad, or black and Negro, but Shoah means the wiping out of an entire society. Whereas Holocaust kind of implies, oh, well, we couldn't help it. The forest, the house burned down. So that is the term that we most use today. So because of our time, there's periods, and that was what was so great, Jamie, is it doesn't just happen. They don't just start suddenly putting people into concentration camps, but a series of events. So here is 1933. And you know where I stand on a lot of issues, but I just finished, watching the news. Alexei Navalny, being assassinated by Putin, and things in this country. We're looking down the barrel. I'm not going to be as extreme. We're not looking at tomorrow, a Hitler, but this same idea of you let evil take a little bit, and you say, oh, it's just those people over there. So do you know that during this period, 1933, it was, and there's the poem or the saying by Pastor Martin Niemöller. Does anybody know that? No, that's Edward Burke. That's another very important one. Yeah. Niemöller was a Protestant pastor who, it's not as well known. He initially kind of settled in with the Nazis. He tolerated them because he had to. And then he himself was later on thrown into a camp. And because of his opposition, he changed his mind. So what he said is, first they came for, I'm not sure if I have it exactly right. First they came for the communists, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the labor organizers, and I didn't say anything, etc. Then they came for the Jews. Then they came for the Catholics. And finally they came for me. And when they came for me, there was no one left. So it's a very classic tale. So the key issue here is 1935, the Nuremberg laws, and up in that, and here's 1933, the public book burnings. But as you were showing in your slideshow, Jamie, from about 33 up to about 38, but really at least 36, you could still get out of Germany and Austria. And then people would try to go to France and so on. 38 this is the Kristallnacht, and you could call it in English the night of broken glass. Okay. Yeah. So this guy says the Holocaust did not begin in the gas chambers. It began with words. 1939, Hitler invades Poland. And once he does that, Poland has quite a lot more Jews than Germany. So I guess what I'm pointing out is it was a gradual movement. It doesn't mean people were not aware. And that's also what Jamie brought out. So if you go, and again, Israelis are a very interesting experience. A lot of the early immigrations of Israelis, not early, way back in the 20s, but there were people who came over in the 30s who had just escaped. And there were people who came here as well. So 38, 39 was the last that you could get out. So then the so-called final solution was proposed in 1941. Not only did things take place in Germany and Poland and Austria and Hungary, but in Russia This is in Ukraine. Babi Yar is, now it has a new name because the Ukrainians said it's called Bob Yarn or something like that. They changed it to a Ukrainian name. I can't get this. Devin, see if you can get this clarified. This thing up here, this button. Babi Yar is a forest outside of Kyiv, and they didn't have time to send them all to the gas chambers. So they just sent them all out to the forest, and they got their guns, and they had the Jews dig their own graves and then shot them right there and buried them. And so the other thing that's kind of sad is for once the Soviets took over, it was just sitting there, this forest. So they finally built, thank you. They finally built a memorial in Babi Yar. I'm going to jump forward and not just talk about the horrible things, but again, how, what, why? Well, some of you know of Elie Wiesel. Here's Yad Vashem. There's additional sources. Elie Wiesel lived through Auschwitz with his father, and the book that he wrote is called Night. And it's just interesting, the story about Night. He moves to France, surviving the war, and so French becomes his language, and he tries to publish this book in 1955. Nobody wants to publish a book in 1955 about the Holocaust. Finally, I read this recently, I did not know this. It was finally published in either Argentina or Chile in Spanish. And then it was discovered, and then it was translated. But you mentioned Eichmann, the Nuremberg trials. Adolf Eichmann was captured in, there's a lot of films on this now, too. There's a film called Finale with,
Kingsley. Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley as Eichmann. Eichmann was a plotter, one of the planners of the final solution. So he had gone to Argentina, where a lot of the Nazis escaped, and the Israelis early, 61, they captured him and they kept him in a house and they brought him back to Israel and they had a trial. And then, so he's in the trial. And so when that happened, both in America, but especially in Israel, it was like the dam had burst. None of it, I mean, some of us are a little older than others. My parents were children of the 30s and 40s. I was a child of the 50s. You didn't talk about it. You didn't talk. You knew there were people with numbers on their arms. And there were people in America and Israel that were survivors, but they lived with such guilt, and more guilt in Israel, because in Israel, this is a strange sort of thing. Even though Israel was the refuge, it was almost as if, we are the strong Zionists, the Ari Ben Canaan, who's the character in the book Exodus, in the movie played by Paul Newman, the heroic Israeli. They didn't want to think about people. So the line was people who went to the slaughter like sheep. So there was a little bit of shame in being a survivor, even though they were proud. Is that making sense?
Interesting, Israel, because his group, some of them didn't come from Europe, and some of them
Also because there were a lot of
due to that,
yeah.
and this being the 40s, the war wasn't as connected as we are now. So when
Correct,
you told
yeah.
these horror stories, it's like you were talking nonsense. This didn't happen. You must.
So what I'm getting at is both in the West and in Israel, after the Eichmann trial, it was like a catharsis. It's like if you had a Manson or something along those lines. So that's when Night was published. And that's when people began telling their stories. And any Twilight Zone fans here? Rod Serling, who's also Jewish, did one of his earliest episodes was this guy who's a Nazi commandant, and he goes back to visit the camp. And in the story, I want to give it away, but he has a dream and he becomes a victim. And in the Twilight Zone thing, he is now a Jew in the camp.
I think you're watching.
It's called The Death's Head Revisited. So Rod Serling, You know, I mean, that episode was almost blacklisted because it was so graphic for American television. Anyway, what I'm getting at is not only did the Holocaust, the Shoah happen, but what's perhaps more interesting is how did people respond to it? How did my generation respond to it? How did my parents' generation respond to it? How did you guys, you know, those of you who learned about it? I don't know how many of you learned about it in public school.
I did.
You did? How much? What, in what way? It
Actually chose to do a report on it, nobody else in the class did.
really
Yeah, it was a short little chapter.
an omen of what was to come.
That's
Yeah.
why I did this. I ended up doing
Yeah.
the same thing. I
Interesting.
was the only one that,
Why was
And you're from here.
Yeah.
And you were from here.
no, I'm
I
from
think
Nebraska.
There is, there was I don't know if it was a law, but there was something in the books to, at some point, to teach grade school kids about.
I see. Okay.
But they didn't dedicate very much time to it.
Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't remember doing anything about it. Like with the Casper.
Right.
Mine did it, and I'm from Colorado, but I think like a lot of things, if it's American, if it's not directly American history, they don't do it a lot.
it depends a lot on where you're from too.
Teaching everybody here except for O'Shea.
Oh, yeah.
In my day, they did teach it, and we read named Frank and a few other
Right.
Jewish.
Right.
And
All right. So I'm grasping at straws to just come up with pithy not sayings, but thoughts to plant in your head for future study, because there's no way we can do justice to it here. One of the things is what Clarence just pointed out. For every story that you read, or book that you read, or movie that you see today, there's a whole market of Holocaust films. People say, "Oh, I got a new idea." There's another one just came out. Zone of Interest.
And also one life.
What's that? On One Life. I am not a big fan of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Because I both book or the movie, because I think it's kind of, it's manipulative, you know, it's telling a story. Well, some of you didn't see it, so watch it anyway.
Kind of meant to show you like they were so destructive. In the end, it cost them one of the.
Right, this little boy, a German, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. It's fictional, but it could have happened. A German boy whose parents are commandants or who are working in the camp befriends a Jewish kid who he sees across from the fence, and he sees, why do they have striped pajamas? And so they meet every day at the fence, and then somehow the German boy gets through the fence and goes in with the kid and goes into the gas chambers. Anyway, there are a lot of films and books available, and I urge you to not, as you were doing, don't shy away from it, delve into it. And why? Because each person is a story. And if you listen to that story, it's going to be different from somebody else's experience. There are those who survived and escaped and came to America and did great. And there were those who still had numbers, and there were those who didn't talk about it. And then suddenly, like I said, 61, 70s, or their kid is now a teenager, and they're suddenly asked, you know, grandma, grandpa, daddy, you know, tell me about, no. You didn't tell me about it when I was a kid. Now I need to know, you know. I'll tell you just two quick stories of my generation. Johnny Jacoby, who's still alive, is a good friend of mine. We used to be part of this Jewish co-op at UCLA. And Johnny's father, Emil, was a partisan in Poland. And then he moved to LA and he became a Jewish educator. So there's Emil, he's working in the Board of Jewish Education. And his mom, gosh, I forgot her name. Emil's gone, but his mother is still speaking. Anyway, his mother came, Johnny wasn't there, but he said that I didn't even know my boss brought in Johnny's mother, she was 89, into the prison with a German woman to talk about forgiveness. So here's all these inmates, women, you know, in their blues and they're in prison. And these two women were talking about how they met and they reconciled, and they didn't know each other during those days, but the German woman had been part of the Hitler Youth. And I think Helena is his mom's name. But the thing about Johnny is that he became active as a political organizer. He founded different Jewish organizations, one of which was called the New Israel Fund, and he became very, very well known in raising money for projects in Israel that were, let's say, out of the way, unusual, like to helping Jewish and Arab kids. Sarah was my first serious girlfriend, and Sarah's father had survived, but he had a whole other family that died in Poland. So he had a whole family, and then she had a older sister who was much older. So what happened is father had come to America and started a new life, and that was when Sarah was born. So she had this whole other family from Europe, and Sarah, like Johnny, became active in the youth movements. But the difference between Johnny's father, Emil, and Sarah's father is Sarah's father didn't talk about it. He just, so she grew up with this big absent experience. And I used to ask her, don't you talk to your parents about it? I mean, they knew, but it was a horrible thing. It was like, you're traumatized. So that's why I'm saying in Israel, add to that the other elements of this issue. Nowadays, the biggest challenge, as you were pointing out, is we've lost so many people. What was the name, Carol, of the brother and sister here that used to speak? Helen and Zoli. So I came here, and I came just in time for Zoli's unveiling. So he had already died. But they were brother and sister who had survived in Poland, and I think he was in the camps, in one of the camps, and they
Yeah,
they both were in the camps. So in Greeley, where I'm going to be this weekend, they're having. We think our Holocaust program is really big. They've been doing it for 30 years with all these different interfaith groups. And I was on a phone call, and they say, well, thank you, Rabbi. Here's the program. They had every church in town was involved in it. Anyway, I want to read this last thing, or somebody want to read here. This is Emil Fackenheim, who was a Canadian Jewish professor of Jewish history. And the 613 commandments that you're supposed to obey. So somebody want to read, if Ed were here, he would do a very dramatic read. Devin, you're closest. Yes. No, there emerges for us. Shut off the sound off. There emerges for us.
There emerges for us a 614th commandment. The Jew today is forbidden to hand Hitler a
Posthumous victory.
We are commanded to survive as Jews, lest the Jewish people perish. We are commanded to remember in our very guts and bones the martyrs of the Holocaust, lest their memory perish. We are forbidden to deny or despair of God, however much we may have to contend with God in our beliefs, lest Judaism perish. We are forbidden to despair of the world as the place in which is meant to become the kingdom of God, lest we help make it a meaningless place. To abandon any of these imperatives in response to Hitler's victories at Auschwitz would be to hand him yet other posthumous victories.
So you understand his implication is he's saying be proud to be a Jew, live with hope, live with faith. However you decide, he says, just deny or despair. He was a very religious man, but this has come down for a lot of people as a very powerful kind of story or theme. So you could say I'm living my life in honor of those people, or I'm somebody took a Hebrew name because of it was Justin, not here, but Justin from the president of the synagogue in Evergreen is a paramedic, and he was called. It's not related to the Holocaust, but it made me think of him. He was called to take care of a shooting that happened in what was it? One of the shootings in Denver? There was one in not Columbine, but anyway, it was a Jewish school. And this kid who was like 16 died in his arms. So he took his Hebrew name. Isn't that incredible? Okay, now how am I going to possibly do this? Okay, let's go to the Israel piece in the time that we have. Yes,
Good question.
sure.
So when we were,
I mean, I'm expecting tears, but I'm trying to avoid that. Go ahead.
when we were researching, Jamie was researching and putting that stuff together, we were thinking about, we collect a lot of things over the years, a lot of military stuff, and she actually has come across a lot of original old photos, and some are from the German side, the Nazi side.
This is
A lot of bad artifacts, I guess you would say, for the
Yep.
history, but it's something where we talk about, still gotta embrace and look at it. You never thought about bringing it in here, because that would seem like.
What is it?
What's a whole, we bought some different military collections over the years. And okay, so some of us are families in the past, but old photographs, like boxes during the war. Military, when the patches, things of that nature. You know, that's something worth people just looking.
I think that, so this is just the class. We will have, on or about, we haven't picked a date yet, where's my phone? This is related to the Hebrew calendar. Passover starts April 22nd this year. After that, in the first week of Passover, I think it's when Passover is just over, is the official commemoration called Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. It was chosen, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent, but it was chosen because it was on that day that the Warsaw Ghetto was liquidated or began. So it's the 27th of Nisan, on or about. So we will probably have what we did last year, and I started to say this before, we take posters from the Holocaust Museum in Washington that the synagogue either bought or somebody arranged for them and they never took them back. We have like 100 posters and we put them up around the room, and we will have a Holocaust program. It will probably be on a weeknight other than Shabbat, because it just seems, a little bit hard. In previous years, we've done it at the Air Force Base. So maybe, even though it's gross, that would be something appropriate to say, hey, this is part of your family's story. Unfortunately, yeah. And
And I can speak. I'm not the only Jew affiliated person on that.
Yeah.
but There are a lot of Jews who do live on there. That would probably be something that would interest them to actually know.
well, that's why I don't know yet. Last year I spoke with the guy who organized, or 2 years ago rather, he organized it there. So we did it there on a weekday. It would be most likely somewhere in the first week of May. Yeah, probably, we might do it on a Sunday, but that's Cinco de Mayo. I don't want to do that. Anyway, yeah, so that's what that is. Holocaust Remembrance Day is an official part of the Jewish calendar here and in Israel. Okay, we got
But I was gonna mention.
Yeah.
Before I leave this, that you do want to cook March 10th at 10 o'clock. We are going to do all the Hamantaschen,
oh,
at least for Purim.
here's your answer to Jewish cooking.
So just,
March what? March 10?
Yeah.
All of them
So
on
it's a
one Sunday.
at 10 o'clock, Sunday. So you
All
guys,
right.
okay?
Thank you, Carol. You're welcome to come back next week, Carol, too. Oh, you know why? Yes, she's right. Wait. Carol, do that part public. Explain to them about the Purim baskets. Everybody in the synagogue, including them, though. So people, we have to get your address.
The fundraiser for the synagogue.
Yeah.
We've done various different ways, different years. But, basically, for $36, you can sponsor your name to go out to everybody else in the synagogue, and we usually send out about 50 to 60 baskets, even to people that are associated but not necessarily members, just to tell them, Happy New Year.
Like we care about you.
And we usually have, hamantash in it, fresh hamantash in the bags, and then we have all sorts of other little goodies that we spread out to the community.
It's a tradition.
We get a letter on it.
It's a tradition for Purim.
So we're gonna make the hamantash on March 10th, and we'll put the baskets together on March 17th, which is the Citrus meeting, and then we'll get them all out. But people will hear about it before then, but we're trying to get it kind of together in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, here's your new cadre of helpers. All right, very, very briefly. So some of this we talked about last week. Here's the man. Here's the handsome Theodore Herzl. And as I said, this idea of what are the Jews? Who are the Jews? What are we going to do with them? Troubled both the Jews themselves and the Germans, the French, the Russians, and some of you remember Ian's talk about Russia. So the irony is that the Jews that were the most active, let's say, in the planning sessions or the meetings, were the German and the French and the higher class, the smart ones, the ones with the elite, the ones with access to power were the ones having the conferences. But the people who really voted with their feet were the Russians. And the Russian Jews were saying, we don't want to go to Azerbaijan or Siberia or Uganda. There was talk about having a Jewish state in Uganda. Wouldn't that be interesting? Madagascar, right? So anyway, Herzl wrote his book, Der Judenstaat, in 1896. In 1897, he convened the first Zionist conference in Basel, Switzerland. But I skipped a couple of slides here. No, it's on another slide. I told you guys last week that there were people before him that nobody paid notice to. Moses Hess from Germany, 1840, wrote his book, and Leo Pinsker, 1885, wrote his book. But, he was a German Jew, Austrian Jew, so he had impact. It's little known that in 1882, there was an Aliyah. Aliyah means going to Israel, the first group of people who came. They were starving, they were hungry, they were, living in malaria tents in the north. Second Aliyah in 1902, partly in response to Russian pogroms. And after World War I, there was a real, influx. After World War I, some of British England had control of the Ottoman Empire, the previous Ottoman Empire, and in 1917, Arthur Balfour, who was not Jewish, but Alfred Balfour went to the Queen, and Her Majesty's government looks with favor upon the establishment of a Jewish home in Palestine. He didn't say Jewish state. So that left the door open to kind of speak out of both sides of their mouths. So the Peel Commission in 1936 didn't reverse that, but they pretty much said, yeah, go ahead. I don't know why I wasn't there. But I mean, they didn't want to piss off the Arabs. Yeah.
Was it because, at the time, they just got control over Palestine and they didn't want it.
Well,
like
that, and the British didn't have it's not that they didn't have.
They didn't have the cojones.
Oh, no,
What you were
no,
saying.
so at the same time, they had the Irish.
Oh, yeah, yes, good
So
point.
In English political process, there is no way to go from a monarchy to the republic. So in their view,
Fascinating.
saying a home is better than a state,
Yeah.
kingdom of.
But you're right. The internal politics would also play a role. You don't want to encourage. We got the Indians. What are we going to do with all of India? Next thing you know, that somebody else is going to be asking. So yeah, that's probably part of it. I mean, England really did create imperialism, even more than America, but we inherited it. But anyway, throughout the 20s, 30s, as things began to get worse and worse for the Jews of Europe, things did not improve in Palestine. In 1939, they issued the white paper, which they said you can have, it was like very small a year. So, but that was great for the Arabs. They weren't Palestinians then, just Arabs who said, you know, that's good for us. So it was a no-win situation. Write this down. I recommend a film. You can probably find it online. I mean, you can buy it, and it's called The Little Traitor. It's a very cute.
That's a wonderful.
I love it. I love it. It's with Alfred Molina, you know, who is Octo Man or whatever, British actor, and this little boy who is a bunch of, it's in the mandate period, in the pre-state period, and his parents are kind of maybe quietly active in the anti-British resistance, but he and his buddies are playing, you know, all day. They play as if they're the resistance to the Haganah, or even more than that, the Irgun, which was the really anti-British, like, you know, the Black Panthers. And but they had curfews. So this guy, Molina's character, catches the kids after curfew. And so he becomes friendly with this little boy. So the movie is all about their friendship. And then things get really bad. So as you see in the end of the movie, they meet up later, much later on, after the state's been established. It's a very sentimental, nice movie. It's Sappy or Happy. Yeah. There's also a movie with Tom Hanks about that pre-state period. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about he's an American who falls in love with a Sephardic girl in Israel. Remember, the first immigrants there were the Sephardic Jews. Yeah. So the most complicated thing today and any other time is this. And I have this on a sheet for handout. I want you to take this and see what you can do on the very last page. Just take it home. Maybe we'll finish it next week and see if you can identify the map. Where is the Golan Heights? Well, I don't know if it's working up there. It's not big enough, but the very top right-hand corner, that's the area that was not taken, but that Israel got from Syria. And if you go to the Golan Heights, you can literally, you know, it's looking down on hundreds of kibbutzim. So for security reasons, they did not give that area back to Syria and probably never will. And so here is beautiful Tel Aviv. And I'm good with glib analogies. If you want to have something easy to remember, think of Tel Aviv like Los Angeles, but with the sense of Santa Monica. It's a coastal city. It's very crowded, buses everywhere. It used to be, by the way, my trip was very revealing. The buses used to stink, and you could die from the exhaust. Now they're all electric. You know, and everything's clean and neat and very. And Jerusalem too. They have the bus. Anyway, so there's Tel Aviv. North is not on this map, but here up in that little crook there is Haifa, which is Israel's San Francisco, much smaller, of course, and hip and very progressive. And then Jerusalem, which is nothing to compare to except maybe Rome. You know, older city, new city. Here is the famous Gaza Strip over here, and you can see why it's problematic, because it's right there next to all the kibbutzim that were attacked. And here's the West Bank. There's actually two parts of the West Bank. Samaria is the north area, this little part of if I can call it a bosom, or a Mickey Mouse ears bigger, the head, and the foot is Judea. And that is extending. And so from Israel's point of view, if Matanin were here, he would say, there's no way Israel's ever going to allow a Palestinian state in the West Bank because of the security issue. But de facto, this is where the bulk of the Palestinians are still living. And here's the Suez Canal over here. And so if you're familiar, this is what Israel looked like before the 6-Day War in 1948. And this is what Israel looked like after the 6 Day War. And then they gave back the Sinai in 1979, gave it back to Egypt. I was there in Israel in 77 when Sadat came, and they had the
Go back to that picture.
what? Oh,
Now, what's the difference in how it looked before and after, except for the color of the mint?
the difference is that the dark green is Israel proper. The light green is disputed well, actually Sinai belongs to Egypt.
Yeah.
But I can still go to Sinai. It's it's peaceful enough that Israelis, when I was there in my first trip, when I was in my 20s and a hippie, everybody would go down here to the southern area to a place called Dahab, and you could rent a hut. It was like going to Hawaii. You can rent a hut and go scuba diving. Nowadays, you can still go to Dahab, but it's under Egyptian control.
They keep it well separate from
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's why it's nice to have a peace treaty with Egypt. But this should not be in dark green and light green, but it's just showing once upon a time, this was under Israel's control. The West Bank is comparing the West Bank and Gaza is like, the West Bank is an Indian reservation in Wyoming, whereas Gaza is, what can I say?
It's like Puerto Rico.
It is like Puerto Rico, but now what we discovered, and I'm, you all know me by now, I'm very much in favor of coexistence and a peaceful resolution. But what we're finding out is what Gaza was doing, what the Hamas was doing with all the money that they were getting, that the UNRWA was giving them, is they were building those goddamn tunnels. And now the tunnels are right under schools and hospitals. So they put their own people in danger.
Trying to
Yeah.
assassinate the Jews. The soccer, they were going to come up and destroy, but they found them down.
Oh, I never knew that. Well, see, this is the thing that is very concerning for me, is that most recently there's more and more reports. It's a little bit like 9/11 or even Pearl Harbor, in the sense that they don't know how much intelligence there was, but that there are rumors that there was plenty of intelligence, that they didn't want to stop it. Anyway, what I want to suggest you do for more reading, I'll send you more material, is here it is, folks. Here is the Ashkenazi, they put Gal Gadot as a representative of the Ashkenazi Jews. Yeah, she was. Is Israel the way into the movie industry or the music industry is through the Army Entertainment Corps. You get into,
You look good though, too.
yeah, it helps you look gorgeous like she does. But the new thing, what's new for me at least, is how many people of color are now living in Israel. This was Operation Magic Carpet, was the immigration of the flying of Jews from Yemen in 47, 48, 49. Operation Moses was a similar operation to bring Ethiopian Jews over. And Operation Solomon. Oh, no, Moses was Uganda.
Yeah.
Moses was Uganda and Solomon was Ethiopia.
Moses was Sudan, I think so.
Okay, maybe I'm, okay, good, guys. I don't mind. I don't mind.
Yeah, juggled around a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, Israel is extremely diverse. And one of my favorite poets, this is not my favorite poem, but I will share my favorite poem with you and we can close tonight. This guy, Yehuda Amichai, and it bridges the gap. He was born in 1924. His name was, let me see if I can find it. I'll have to look it up for next week. Gertold. Anyway, he was a German Jewish kid whose parents had the foresight to get out in 1935. And they moved to Petach Tikva, where he, studies and whatever. And he becomes an Israeli for all intents and purposes. So he changes his name. He's in the 1948 war and he changes his name. And he was in the 48 war, the 56 war. In 67, he was already in his 50s, but they drafted him anyway. And he became Israel's, I would want to say, Walt Whitman, or more contemporary, E. Cummings, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Allen Ginsberg. Well, Allen Ginsberg was quite a crazy guy. But let me see if I can find the poem, or do I have it on this computer? If not, I will read it next time. It's one of my favorite poems. What is it? Amichai. Let's find if I just go by Amichai. All the generations. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, I have it. I had it saved. And he wrote this poem in somewhere in the 1970s. All the generations before me. They remember his parents were survivors. I should have told you this because I've read his whole biography. One of the books he wrote was about his father, and his father was a World War I Jew who fought in Germany. And so he had all these medals. And when the Nazis came to their house and, bang on the door and stuff, they said, "You don't deserve these." They ripped all his medals away. And that's when they decided to get out. He also tells a story about a little girl. I mean, he was a teenager, but he was in love with this little girl, and she used to ride her bicycle, and they would ride bicycles together, and they left and she didn't. So he always felt guilty to say, where did she go? So he lived with that guilt. Anyway, here's the poem. All the generations before me donated me piece by piece so that I would be erected here in Jerusalem all at once, like a synagogue or charity institution that commits one. Now, the Hebrew says, it obligates you, like, I got to live with this. So my translation is the best I could do. It's a responsibility. So that's the refrain. I am reaching the age my father was when he died. My last will is crisscrossed with superscriptions, meaning like you have your will and then you cross it out, saying, I'm going to give this to so-and-so, give this to so-and-so. So he says, my last will is crisscrossed. Every time I write it, I have to change it. I must change my life and my death each day to fulfill all the predictions about me so they won't be lies. Ze mechayev, it obligates me. I have passed my 40th year. There are posts I cannot fill because of that. Had I been in Auschwitz, they would not have sent me to work. They would have burnt me right away. That commits one. So I'll leave you with that. It's not meant to be too heavy, but that's what I live with. That's just one of the reasons I read this poem at my first high holiday service when I was in my first year of rabbinical school, and my parents came to Philly to see me. And I said, Mom, Dad, this is for you. Anyway. All right, guys. As usual, I talked a lot, but let's have another hand to Jamie and Devin for their presentation. For him too, because he narrated. And thank you to everybody. So let's see, did I miss any other announcements? So yeah, what? Oh, Mary's been telling me my camera was off. Oh, shoot.
That's why I turned it.
Was your son? Was
Yeah,
yours?
I turned it so. mine-
Oh,
And like.
why
last
didn't you
week-
poke me? Poke me harder. Like all I would have had to do is,
Because
I was doing this. Oh, shit.
it's all right.
All right.
It'll
All right.
work out. They heard.
But that means also that was it still recorded?
Yeah. I
Okay, you got
recorded
it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have it then.
Yeah.
Okay. Ian, why didn't you write to me? It's all your fault.
Because he was in and out. Weren't you?
I know you were busy.
Yeah.
I didn't
That's what
turn my
said.
camera on, but that's okay. I wasn't important anyway. Okay, bye, sweetheart. Hey, Brooke, don't work too hard.
Were we outside?
What time is it? 8:50. We're okay. All right.
Are we?
So you'll
Bye to everybody online?
saying goodbye to everybody
Bye,
online.
everybody online.
They say write a chat. You're the chat meister. I'll just leave. Say goodbye. Bye-bye, Bailey. I didn't know my camera wasn't on. See, there wasn't anything to see
Yeah,
anyway. I was,
That's what I said. It was just the slide.
yeah.